I don't know how long I have to write this. Actually, I'm not sure how long I'll still be alive. I don't know how, but it's all coming true. Everything she said is coming true. I'm sorry, I'm getting too far ahead here. This is just... God, I barely even know where to begin here. I guess I should just start with the laundromat itself. It's the old laundromat that's situated right at the edge of the city. Ned's Washers. The place itself is old as hell, being around since probably at least the 70s. And it's one of those that's fitted with a couple arcade machines to keep the little ones occupied while the adults are busy. The outside looks like it's barely holding itself together, with the sign on the front being faded and torn so bad that it now reads Ed's Ashes. The inside looks a little bit better, but not by much. You can still see its age with cracks in the walls in certain places, as well as paint chipped from the walls, particularly in the restrooms, or at least the women's restroom. Bottom line, the place has seen quite a bit of mileage. That said, it was still a nice enough place, and Ned, the owner himself, was a sweet old man that always made my trips there all the more enjoyable. By telling me exaggerated ghost stories about his fishing trips up in the mountains. Even if I personally didn't believe in ghosts or that sort of thing, though I might be rethinking my stance on that. I'd been using Ned's Washers for about 3 years now. Ever since I finally moved out of my folks' house and got an apartment, they have washing machines at my apartment complex, but for some reason, there seems to be some sort of cosmic force that tells everyone that they should all hog the machines for the day anytime I plan to wash clothes. Plus, on the 2 or 3 occasions I did get lucky and was able to access them, they never seemed to get all the stains out, no matter what detergent I used. They always came out of the dryer still damp. Now, Ned's, my clothes always came out clean, dry, and fresh, even smelling a lot nicer, too. In short, despite the machines being free at the apartment complex, the quality and availability made it worth it, in my opinion, to just hit up Ned's whenever it was laundry day. Bianca, my roommate, and best friend since freshman year of high school, also felt the same. So we typically either go together or we take turns washing for the both of us. The place was never usually all that busy, usually only having about 2 or 3 others in place whenever I'd be there. The most I'd ever see is about 5 others. Of these is the old lady I mentioned earlier, the one who now causes me to lose sleep. She'd always be sitting alone in from one of those washing machines at the far end of the laundromat. Always alone. Regardless of how many others were there, singing softly. Because there usually wasn't much going on in the place, it wasn't hard to hear her singing. Though at least for a while, I never actually could make out the things she said in her serenades. Despite this, I always found her voice beautiful and smooth, if not a bit mournful. She was short, very pale, looking almost sick. She was very thin, always wearing an old green dress with a veiled hood that she always had pulled over her face. Even still, though, she still looked like just a sweet old lady. I remember always thinking that there was just something about her, something cerebral, something fantastic, if that makes any sense. I don't know anyone who ever tried to talk to her or engage with her. Actually, being completely honest, it seemed like they didn't even notice her there. Like, they couldn't see her. I guess that was just something that interested me more about her. She was just there. Oblivious to the world around her, with the world being just as much so to her. The other thing about her, though, was that I never saw her anywhere else in the town. Only there in Ned's Washers. Given how small my town is, being one of those everybody knows where and how everybody sleeps types, this struck me as especially weird. I mean, sure, maybe she could have been not from around here. But then that begs the question of how far exactly she'd be coming from and how she's managing to always be there every time I was. I mean, like I said, I'd been hitting up the place at least 2, sometimes 3 times a month for at least the past 3 years, and every time, there she'd be, singing while she either folded, turned inside out, or wrung out her clothes at the back of the laundromat. I thought about trying to go up and talk to her, figure out who she was, but Being the painfully shy for my own good type of girl I've always been since I was little, my anxiety always kicked in, and I always ended up talking myself out of it. It was a couple months ago, however, that I decided to ask Ned about it. Maybe he knows her. A friend of his, maybe. When I asked him, though, he looked at me like he hadn't the slightest clue what the hell I was talking about. You know, the old lady over there. I pointed to the other side where she was, humming while she was folding what looked like a pair of pants. You know her? He shook his head. No, I'm afraid I don't rightfully know, sweetheart. The look on his face told me, though, that he still didn't seem to know what I was even talking about. Like he, too, didn't seem to see her. Oh, I replied. Well, I always see her in here, so I figured you'd know. Afraid not. Then again, though, old age is catching up with me, so I'm not the most reliable one to ask. He laughed and said, Hell, the only reason I even remember you is because you're always yakking with me, so I can't really forget about you. I couldn't help but laugh with him when he said that. It was true. He was starting to leave his prime. Still, I couldn't help but find it weird that Ned didn't notice her, even when I pointed her out to him. I decided to leave it be, though, and went on with washing my clothes. The place was dead, even more so than when I'd said earlier. It was one of the days where the only people there were me, Ned, and the old woman. Because of this lack of any other background noise, I could listen to the woman sing while I was waiting for my clothes to finish in the rinse cycle. Her voice was absolutely beautiful. It seemed to actually reach me. I know how cheesy that sounds, but I don't know how else to put it. Her voice was so sultry and smooth, sounding almost like she was singing a child to sleep. Think if you took the voice of Enya and mixed it together with a Scottish accent. That's what she sounded like. I tried to listen to her song, and became more and more lost, though, in her tones. Eventually I was able to discern a verse from one. Laurie had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Laurie had a little lamb whose heart was black as coal. Loved him, she did, but he be wicked and damned, wicked and damned, wicked and damned. Loved him, she did, but he be wicked and damned, without heart or soul. I found this to be equal parts interesting as well as odd. Again, her voice was beautiful, but the lyrics struck me as weird. For one thing, those obviously weren't the words to Mary Had a Little Lamb, despite her singing words to the tune. Secondly, why were the lyrics so depressing and rather ominous? Still, though, I continued to listen while I waited to put my load into the dryer. She continued singing. The horrid beast's name be Sam, name be Sam, name be Sam. The horrid beast's name be Sam, whose mind is dark and foul. In my focus, I almost didn't even hear the washing machine buzz when it finished. The longer I listened, the more I noticed her voice becoming sadder and sadder. I thought at any moment she was going to burst into tears. Being perfectly honest, whether because of the emotions and raw feelings evoked through her voice, or because of the lyrics themselves, I was feeling more and more depressed myself the more I listened to the old lady's song. But at the same time, it felt hypnotic in a way. Like I couldn't make myself stop listening to her. I'd get so lost in this that I actually lose track of the time again. I was just sitting there continuing to listen to her sing one sad song after another while she either folded or wrung out the clothes that she was washing until I was abruptly snapped back to reality by Ned tapping me on the shoulder, telling me it was time to close up for the night. I looked to see that my load had been sitting in the dryer, long done by this point. Looking out the window, I saw that it was night. Christ, I thought. How was it night already? After apologizing to Ned for keeping him over, I quickly grabbed my stuff out of the dryer and went to my car. Just before leaving Ned's washers, though, I looked inside one last time to see that the old woman was still sitting there, washing clothes. This made me pause for a minute. How come Ned hadn't booted her out too? When I saw Ned come out and locking up, I decided to ask him about it. Hey, you do know she's still in there, right? He cocked his eyebrows at me. Huh? Who is? The old lady. I pointed to her through the window. See? He leaned into the glass for a second before looking at me again, confused. I'm afraid, sweetheart, that there's nobody in there. What are you talking about? She's right there, folding a pair of... I hesitated for a moment before saying, confused, a pair of jeans. Looking closer, I saw that she was folding what looked like a pair of jeans. Specifically, a pair of young woman's jeans. Now, before you start asking, yes, I realize how stupid that sounded. The reason this seemed so odd to me, though, was that they looked like they belonged to a much smaller woman. Much younger woman, maybe even a teenager, or at least a young adult, with sequin designs on the pockets and those rips that you'd see on the thigh areas. They were all the rage for high school girls. Maybe she has a granddaughter or something. Somehow, though, I couldn't tell you why, but that just wasn't the case here. In any case, it didn't really matter in the end because Ned still claimed he couldn't see anybody in the laundromat. By that point, it was getting on midnight, and I had to get home. I was getting hungry, and I hadn't eaten since that Arby's roast beef sandwich I grabbed for lunch on the way to Ned's, which is a problem for me because I have problems when it comes to my blood sugar levels getting too low, dizziness, nausea, stuff like that, if I don't eat for long periods of time. Because of this, and because everything on my end of town closed for the night half an hour before, the drive home was tense, with me trying not to lose consciousness at the wheel. When I got back to my apartment, I found that on the front of the door was a note from Bianca, saying she'd gone out and that her sister, Loretta, and her boyfriend was crashing there for the night. The lights were off and everything was quiet, so I went in as quietly as I could. Immediately after opening the door, though, I was hit with a horrid smell. The smell of something that died in the walls, mixed with straight BO. It was honestly everything I could do not to lose my stomach in the doorway there. I held my breath as I locked the door behind me and made my way to the kitchen. And I still had to eat. God, Lordy, what the hell are you doing in here? It was in the kitchen that the smell seemed to be the strongest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I flicked on the lights. And what I saw then did cause me to throw up. Right there, in the middle of the kitchen floor, in the middle of the floor splayed out across the kitchen tiles, was the body of a young woman. At first, I was too disgusted and shocked to look long enough to see who it was. Then, however, seeing the dirty blonde hair and smooth, rosy cheeks now drained of color, my disgust transformed into horror. It was Loretta. It was the body of Bianca's younger sister, Loretta, Little Lori, as I used to tease her. Immediately, I called the police, telling them that I'd found a young girl's body in my kitchen. The police were on their way, and I just stood frozen in the middle of my kitchen, 10,000 thoughts crashing like an avalanche through my head. What the hell happened? Who did this? Why? God, what am I gonna tell B? I then broke from my stupor and called B to tell her, as collected as I could possibly try to be, what happened to Loretta. Unfortunately, even after calling at least 5 times and getting sent straight to voicemail, I had to leave a panicked message saying, B, oh my God, B, you gotta get over here now. It's Loretta. She's dead. The police arrived soon after and took over. When they asked, I told them I'd only just walked in the door when I found her. I showed them the note that B had left. You know of anyone who'd want to hurt her? One of the officers asked me. I shook my head. It was true. I didn't know who'd do this. Soon I heard thumping footsteps coming from the front door. Where is she? I looked to see Bianca standing at the opening of the kitchen, being blocked off by 2 of the officers. After telling them she was Loretta's sister, they let her through, and immediately seeing the body, she dropped to her knees and howled in grief as she cradled her sister's head. I'm so sorry, B, I cried out. She just kept wailing, crying out, oh God, not you, Lori. God, no. Eventually, the police led us out of the apartment into the hallway when the ambulance brought in the gurney. B turned away when they were bringing the body out, but I didn't. I watched them bring Lori out. It's because of this that I noticed it for the first time. It was while they were trying to wheel the gurney past the threshold of the front door that they hit a bump, causing her right leg to flop down limply. That was when I noticed she was wearing a pair of tight, dark blue jeans, with rips across the upper thigh area, and the reflective glint of a sequined flower was stitched on the pocket. Despite still being overcome with shock, grief, confusion, and about 100 so odd other feelings, it was all soon joined by a haunting sense of familiarity. A sense of déjà vu, almost. Like I'd seen this before. That couldn't be. My mind, for just a brief instant, cycled back to a couple hours before in the parking lot of Ned's. Are those the same pants? Again, I know how dumb it sounds, and sure, there probably are a bunch of other pairs of pants just like those, but I'm telling you, the pants the lady was washing looked exactly like the ones Lori was wearing. I ended up swallowing this down, though, unable to really think clearly about anything at the moment, far less about some half-baked conspiracy with the old woman at the laundromat. Just before leaving, one of the police officers gave us a number and told us they'd call if they found any leads. That night, Bianca stayed with her folks at her place. She offered for me to come along, but I decided that I'd be better if I just got a hotel room for a few days instead. We agreed to keep in touch about if and when we come back to the apartment. For the next couple of days, time seemed to run together. Felt like days were both flying by while at the same time moving at a snail's pace. I was, of course, swallowing in grief, barely even able to bring myself out of bed most of the time, and eventually I decided that I needed to spend some time out. I drove around for a couple hours, not really able to decide on where I wanted to go. Finally, I just settled on stopping into Ned's washers. I figured, if anything, maybe talking to old Ned might be able to lighten me up a bit. It looked to be empty again when I pulled into the parking lot. Through the window, though, there she was. The old woman, folding clothes. I began to wonder how long she'd been there, given the place only opened 2 hours ago. Did she camp out by the front door or something? I walked in and I looked around, unable to find Ned anywhere. Ned! Hello? Where are you at? Nothing. Silence. Or at least silence except for the old woman singing. Oh, little bee, why do you fly away, little bee? A family ye may have, but friends miss ye, do you see? Oh, little bee, don't fly away. Far you'll only fall, and alone in the dark you'll stay. This time the words were sung to the tune of You Are My Sunshine. Her voice seemed even softer than before, even sadder, like she just lost someone herself. Hearing this, I couldn't help but approach her. Who is she? I asked softly, putting my hand on her shoulders. Her voice stopped abruptly and she was still. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. A good lass, she replied in her smooth voice, cutting me off. A pretty little lass who's lost her kin. Were you close to her? She shook her head. Nah. But I know someone who was. What happened? Admittedly, part of me felt bad asking that question. I knew it was probably none of my business, but I couldn't help myself for some reason. She was quiet for another minute before speaking up again. Little bee wanted to fly away, far from where her kin lays. When she does, her wings, they fail her. And she falls. And 'neath the cold waters, she'll lay forever. I actually felt my heart begin to break hearing this. Again, whether it was what she was saying or how she said it, it seemed to resonate with me on a visceral level. At the same time, though, I couldn't help but wonder exactly what she meant by all of this. Little bee? Who the hell was that? What was she wanted to fly away but her wings failed her supposed to mean? I was actually just about to shake it off as the eccentric ramblings of old age when something caught my eye. Beside her was a large bag of clothes, the one she always had with her. Now, however, I saw a hot pink halter top with a skateboarding panda bear on the front. Now I knew something was up. That was Bianca's halter, the one that I had custom made for her from a website for her birthday last year. And looking closer, I noticed that there was red stain spattered across the front of it. "Where did you get this?" I demanded, snatching it from the bag. She looked at it, and then to me with an expression of pure sadness. "Where did you get this? Did Bianca give it to you?" She slowly shook her head. "Then where did it come from, huh? Did you steal it? What the hell is all over it?" She just turned away, taking the halter from my hands and throwing it into the washer before going back to folding another shirt. "Look, if this is a joke, it's not a joke, dear. I take no pleasure in what I do. I wish you didn't see me do it either. I don't wish for anyone to see me while at work." "What are you talking about?" I was starting to become really irritated really quick. What was this old goat's deal? I, too, used to watch an old woman while she washed, and now here I am, toiling and suffering, all the same. I don't like washing their shroud, but that's what I have to do. I decided before losing my cool with this lady to walk out. On the drive back to the hotel, all I could think about was the old woman's words, none of it making any sense. What does she mean by she didn't like washing the clothes? What'd she mean by she used to watch an old woman while she washed, and now she's forced to do the same? And let's not forget the million-dollar question. Where and how in the name of God did she get Bianca's halter top? That led me further down the rabbit hole, cycling back to Loretta's death. The pants, the ripped, sequin-pocketed pants. Now I was sure they had to be the same. Of course, it still wasn't adding up. This still didn't make any sense to me. Who the old lady was, what she was talking about, or why, or what she was doing with my friend's clothes. I was about halfway back to the hotel when I got a text from Bianca telling me to meet her back at my apartment. She said that she got confirmation earlier that day that I was good to come back now, and that they had some information regarding Lori's murder. When I pulled up, B was standing outside with two of the officers from before. "We found a possible suspect," one of them said. "Who?" B exclaimed, looking like she was ready to jump out of her skin. The officer then rummaged around his pocket before pulling out a piece of paper. "Witness claimed to see this man with your sister that night. Also claimed to see him bolting out of the room as well." He unfolded the paper and our faces went as white as a sheet. It was a composite sketch of Loretta's boyfriend. "Oh my God, no," Bianca cried, covering her mouth in disbelief. "No, it can't be." "You know him?" "Yeah, that's her boyfriend, Samuel Lander. But no, he couldn't have done this. I know him. He wouldn't hurt her." I put my hand around B and brought her close to me. I wanted to comfort her, tell her this was some mistake or something. I mean, I knew Samuel too. The guy wasn't the type to do something like this. Honestly, he was the guy most girls would probably peg as the nice guy. Always showing up to date with flowers, wearing polos and khakis all the time, constantly showering her with compliments as well as telling the corniest jokes, but Lori would always still laugh at them anyway. I didn't want to believe that this was the same guy who just murdered sweet little Lori in cold blood. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling in the back of my head that, in a way, this had somehow been predetermined. The horrid beast's name be Sam, whose mind is dark and foul. Sure enough, the next day, it was in the news. 28-year-old Samuel Lander charged with the murder of girlfriend 26-year-old Loretta Crockett. At the trial, about a week later, he pled guilty to second-degree murder. I remember the way that his face looked when he admitted to killing Loretta. Blank. Empty. When asked why, he replied that it just happened. One moment we're having fun playing rough, the next I'm strangling her on the floor. And then she was dead. In the end, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole. After that, things seemed to slow down again. I returned to the apartment while B decided to just stay at her folks' place. Like I said, this was all a couple of months ago. Now fast forward to 2 weeks ago, where I'd actually managed to forget all about the old woman. Granted, I hadn't been stopping by Ned's either. The whole thing with Loretta seemed to also fade to the back of my mind as well. In short, I guess you could say I moved on. Bianca, on the other hand, not so much. She never came back during that time to the apartment. She never really answered my calls or texts either. I couldn't really blame her for not wanting to come back. At the same time, I was honestly starting to worry about her. That was why when she texted me that Monday out of nowhere, I all but jumped to my phone to respond. Hey, I wanted to say thank you for being an awesome friend and a great roomie. I'm leaving town next week and flying up to a place in the mountains up north. There's just too many painful memories here now. I'll be by through the week to get my stuff in the apartment and go ahead and give you half of my next year's rent. I won't lie, this was not at all what I was hoping for. What was worse, a distinct chill ran down my spine. Flying? She said she was flying. That's when the song slowly came back to me, prickling through my brain. Oh, little bee, don't fly away. Far you'll only fall, and alone in the dark you'll stay. Is this what she meant? What the old woman meant? That Bianca was gonna die, like how she somehow knew Lori would. This circulated through my head all the weeks while B came and packed up her stuff. Once or twice because of this, I tried to persuade her to reconsider her decision. It was no good, though, and it's not like I couldn't feel where she was coming from either. Plus, how was I supposed to explain why I didn't feel comfortable with her flying? In the end, she agreed to at least let me drive her to the airport. At least say goodbye between two friends. Promise you'll keep in touch, okay? I said, anxiety seeping into my voice. She said, okay. Before turning and heading for the terminal. With nothing else I could do, I headed back to my car. Deep inside, I was silently hoping that something would happen, the flight would be cancelled, or something. She texted me a few hours later after I'd returned home saying they'd taken off. For the next 2 days after that, things seemed to be fine, with B texting me at least once to let me know everything was still okay. Because of this, I finally was starting to relax again. Maybe the old woman was just spouting crazy stuff all along. Maybe Bianca will be okay after all. Of course, that third day came and went without a single word from her. After being as patient as I could, trying to tell myself that she must be too high up to get any reception, I began flooding her with calls and texts. None of these were met with a reply. That's when panic set in. I tried calling her folks to see if they'd heard from her, but they said that she hadn't spoken to them since the day she left with me for the airport. I asked if they'd give her a call, and they did. With no response. I was freaking out now. I didn't eat or sleep or even go to the bathroom. I was glued to my phone, praying harder than ever that Bianca would text me saying she was okay. It was late that night, around 12:30 a.m., that a breaking news broadcast came on the TV. Catawba County Airlines Flight 341 malfunctions and disappears over Atlantic. My heart stopped. My blood froze solid. 341? No. That isn't... But it was. Remembering seeing the number on the side of the plane, it was Bianca's flight. I felt dizzy and just barely made it to the bathroom to throw up. It happened. It happened just like Lori's death happened, exactly how the old woman said that it would. The memorial was that past Sunday, 4 days ago. I didn't go. I couldn't go. I was so overcome with fear, confusion, and all-around sheer paranoia that I barely would even leave my bed. It was only this afternoon, unable to put up with the smell of my dirty clothes anymore, that I finally left the house. I thought at first to just suck it up, start using the downstairs washer, but of course, they were all full with people lining up all the way up to the stairs waiting. I crossed my fingers on the way to Ned's, hoping the old woman wouldn't be there. Again, just my luck. There she was. When I went in, I tried my best to avoid looking at her. Ned offered his condolences and talked to me for a while, which helped ease my nerves at least a little at first, but when he had to run to the bathroom, everything was quiet again. Except for the old woman's singing. When I looked to her this time, she was looking right at me with tears in her eyes, and she began singing, this time to a similar tune. Oh, Rita dear, oh, Rita dear, ye were a sweetheart, oh, Rita dear. My eyes went wide. That was my name. I briefly glimpsed in her hands was the very same t-shirt I wore the last time that I was there, covered in red stains, like with Bee's halter top, right as she was throwing it into the washer, and began singing again. I turned and all but threw myself out the door and into my car. From there, I made a beeline back to the apartment, where I am now, buried like a little kid under my blankets. I'm scared. I can't leave my house. I'm next. What's gonna happen? Am I gonna die in a car crash? Is someone gonna murder me like with Loretta? At this point, I'm probably gonna die of a heart attack or something. I don't know. But she does. I don't know how, but she knows. And somehow, she sees when and how you and I will die. And now I see it too. I see it. And I wish, more than anything, now, that I didn't. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta. I want to tell you thank you so much for watching today's video on YouTube or listening to today's episode of the podcast on the podcast. Tonight, I'm going to let you know about a couple of authors that I really love their work of, and I think all of you have too. Usually in my live streams, you guys will tell me some of your favorite stories, but these ones constantly show up, and I feel like a lot of you don't know that there's actual novels that continue on from the stories that you just hear on YouTube. And in some cases, I even do the audiobooks for them that you can find on Audible. 3 of which I'm going to let you know about right now. The Neverglades, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 are available right now on Amazon, both on Kindle and on paperback. And My Tiny Town Just Got Put on Lockdown is available on Amazon as one major novel that contains both Season 1 and Season 2, which is not done on the channel yet, as well as a brand new one called The Study, an Effluvium Hayes novel, which continues the story of My Tiny Town Just Got Put on Lockdown. And of course, I think one of everybody's favorite series is on here, Tales from the Gas Station, currently has a 4th volume that has just come out. I did the audiobooks for Volume 1 through 3. 4 will come out eventually. So, without further ado, I want to give a very big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Bobby Karman, Tonya Oran, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, That One Guy, Lupita Galvan, That Creepy Chick, Tyler Fletcher, Rebecca Harper, MerkyMoo, Red Shadow Cat, Xavier the Cheyenne, Demyx, Shawn, Cadieu-baker, 6 Gay Rats in a Trench Coat, Turtleman, Rob Like Sharp Things, KhaosArts, Kryolinian, Milk and Miel, Zachary Graffius, Gorang Tramagasi, Maria Walker, Pain Gravy, Crazy Kid, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Aka Limchalk, Dirt Diver, Matt Bach, Jabbles Raz, Voice of Sand, Coffee Zombie, Matthew McNeese, Shelly J, Jeremy H, Raltazal, Ficomel, Nana, Nick Weaver, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, Guy Mara Ravenswood, William King, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Nessie, Ronnie Hansen, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, My Body Sounds Like Rice Krispies, Kaylee Ambrose, Suji Campbell, Frickin', Azarine Fox, Freddy Krueger, Nicholas Zaccardi, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiwi the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester's Lampshade, Guy Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. As always, thank you guys so very, very much. Thank all of you who are in the description down below, and honestly, thank all of you that can give anything, even when it comes down to just $1. I appreciate you guys very, very much. Sweet dreams.